Hey there, we're the Westlot Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scuzz Knuckle Puck Scousebow.
Wow. Love where you're going with that. Quack, 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 I guess. But we are talking Oregon. Last year we only had one of the new West Coast Big Ten teams on our schedule. This year we have three as we kick off our conference slate with a game against last year's number one seed going into the college football playoff. The
How'd
Oregon
that work
Ducks.
out?
Yeah, well, I mean, we knew when we previewed Oregon last year and when we previewed Ohio State, we knew that game in Eugene was going to be insane, and it was insane. And the fact that they then came back and played again in the playoff, we honestly, I think we all expected him to play three times because, were it not for Michigan, they would have played again in the Big Ten championship. But
my quip there was more. It was less levied at Oregon. It sounded like I was levying at Oregon. Really, I was levying it at. You referred to them as the number one seed, and I was recalling in the moment that the top four seeds all lost in that second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. That
Still kind of crazy.
True.
And
Right.
Getting that seed, which I would have assumed was, get a bye, avoid
Get
a
a bye,
potential
get
upset.
a home game. They didn't get the home game.
No, you don't get the home game.
Not get the home game.
Yeah, and so because I remember a lot of discussion around we were discussing with our buddies from Winning Cures, everything I think Chris was just saying why wouldn't you just want the bye? Why wouldn't you want the bye? I was like, well, if you're the AD, you probably want the home game.
Yeah,
that worked out pretty
Notre
well
Dame was
for
fine with never getting the bye, right?
Yep.
Penn State too.
Yeah, absolutely wild.
It's this. I will say off the top on this one, it's the juxtaposition between this is the first time this year and these are the kind of conversations we're having because we're previewing a team that is so squarely in the national conversation, right? And
yes.
Were last year. And also, it's our third game of the season, and we're playing this team at home on the lake. And
Which
it's those two things. It's a lot on the plate.
Well, the fact that they, didn't take the easy way and schedule that for Wrigley, is really cool. At least for us. I mean, it's.
I am really curious what kind of travel presence the Ducks are going to have. And I get
probably pretty decent. It's mid-September
but are
in
they?
Chicago.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I mean, it's
because unlike I'm leaning back on. I watched them play LSU to open the 2011 season, I believe, in Dallas. It was coming off of their national championship loss to was that Auburn in 2010?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so an Oregon team in the throes and grip of the national narrative, opening the season at Jerry World against LSU, and they were outnumbered 8-1 by LSU fans, and that's not just because LSU fans are nuts. And you look at Chicago, it's why does Ohio State and Michigan outdraw Penn State to our stadium every single time because it's just not
Nebraska. It's the same thing.
Yeah, there's just not as many of those alums in Chicago,
right.
and Oregon is even fewer.
Right. I agree. I think that they did this because they not to be cynical in any way, but I don't think they thought that there was some big amount of cash they'd be losing by putting this out on the lake. I don't know. I'm with you, Sam, that I'm sure they're a brand and there will be some people who will travel, but I don't think it's going to be like some of these other. I just feel like with a Washington or with an Oregon, and I kind of doubt from Eugene, Oregon, I don't know how much of a draw Chicago is. I'm not sure. I don't. But I guess we'll find out. I'm sure they're going to have representation, but
Well,
I'll tell you some people that are traveling up for this game.
Who?
Team Scousebo, y'all.
there you go.
Oh, yeah.
I'm bringing the whole crew. The whole clown car is coming. Let's
Hell
go.
Yeah, love it.
Phenomenal.
We have to see if Dan Rubenstein will come by the tailgate again this year. I pretty much guarantee he'll be at the game.
Oh yeah, for sure. I guess there's one very prominent Oregon fan living not just in Chicago but in Evanston.
But anyway, this is a team coming off just an incredible year last year. Obviously, did not end the way they wanted it to. But John, defensively, what are we looking at from the Ducks?
Yeah, I mean, until they ran into Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, they were arguably the class of college football. And yeah, from a defensive standpoint, I talked last summer about how Oregon was of the four teams coming in defensively, they were the Pac-12 team that was rolling into the Big Ten with Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy and this phenomenal defensive culture those guys have built. And that's exactly what they brought to the conference in year one. And I mean, like, we could nitpick and be like Debbie Downer and be like, for example, you could say, if you look at the stats, Oregon's run defense was just slightly worse than Northwestern's run defense last year in pretty much every way. And you could say also, like, Ohio State shredded that defense in the Rose Bowl. But overall, like, give me a break. Like, you got to step back. This defense was a monster last year. Against the pass, end to end, they were as good as it gets. Few teams in the nation were better at getting to the quarterback and defending in coverage and picking off passes. Some of their less flashy run defense stats, the ones that I talked about, can be chalked up to the fact that this is one of those sexy attacking defenses that we've talked about in years past. This is a defense that takes risks and gets after it. That's a style that allowed Oregon to rack up 84 tackles for loss last year, and that helped earn 9 different guys some form of all Big Ten recognition. And look, they lose some major guys off of that defense this year. And this is probably going to be one of the best defenses in the country. They're just going to be awesome. You tell me what you want, and I will tell you how Oregon has it. So do you want an awesome defense-first head coach, who's one of the very best defensive head coaches in the country? Oregon has that in Lanning. Do you want an entrenched, overqualified defensive coordinator who could be head coaching somewhere else like right now? Oregon has that in Tosh Lupoy. Do you want a lead pipe lock preseason All-America Defensive Player of the Year candidate about whom buckets of ink are going to be spilled in the opening weeks of the season? The Ducks have Mateo Uiagalelei at defensive end. Do you want elite linebackers who don't make mistakes and stack tackles? The Bucks have 2 of those in Bryce Betcher and Tatum Tuioti. And to that core, Oregon is adding, and here we can frame it as a question, is this the greatest incoming defensive transfer class in NCAA history? I would say it's no worse than top 3 ever. And I want to pause as I say this, and I want you to close your eyes and envision what you think of when you think greatest incoming transfer class ever must mean. And now open your eyes, because I'll tell you, Oregon has brought in 4 guys on defense in this transfer class. Not 14 guys, 4 total guys in this class. And those 4 guys are Theron Johnson, Jaden Kennedy, Bear Alexander, and Dylan Thieneman. That's ludicrous. That is a ludicrous transfer haul. Understand, you can take any defense in the country, any power conference team, and add those 4 guys, and now that defense potentially has a top 5 secondary in the nation and a monster at defensive tackle. And all 4 of those guys, who are all elite, that's 2 all-conference coverage-first cornerbacks, including our very own Thienan Johnson, a guy who was a freshman All-American 2 years ago in Dylan Thieneman, who was light years the best player on Purdue's defense for the past 2 years, and Bear Alexander, an absolute monster defensive tackle. You can add those guys. So not only are those guys all monster players, they're all positions of need for Oregon. Those are all positions other than the awesome guys that I listed that are still on this Oregon roster. In other words, Oregon has 7 guys on this defense, the 7 guys I just mentioned, who are all going to be in the conversation for best defensive end, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerback, and safety in the conference. It's just nothing but veteran guys who have proven that they are elite football players. And that's just 7 guys. That's to say nothing of any of the other guys Oregon has recruited or other team veterans who are going to step into bigger roles. And the fact that these guys are getting as good a defensive level of coaching as any guys are in the country. So, I mean, from a larger standpoint, I mean, we'll talk about Oregon's picture in the Big Ten race in a little bit. For us, there's no good news here. I would say character-wise, this defense probably most closely resembles, from a defense we've played, the Penn State defense that came to town 2 years ago. And hey, we were tied 10-10 with that team at halftime. But from a defensive standpoint, that's the character is such, you are praying you can make hay on the ground. Somehow, can you move the chains on the ground on first and second down? Because God help you if it gets to third and long against this team. They're a nightmare team to be behind the sticks on. You're going to get crushed. Points are going to be at a premium here. It's going to be no fun seeing Theron Johnson out there covering Griffin Wilde on the lake, knowing that Theron could still be on our side of the football. Between Uiagalelei and Alexander, that's as good of a 2 guys as our offensive line is going to face all year. It's going to be a huge test. Johnson, Kennedy, and Thieneman are going to give those 2 guys a lot of time to get after Preston Stone when we have to throw the ball. This is going to be an awesome defense. It's going to take our very best football game of the year to beat this defense.
Well, I don't love the sound of that. Scuzz, make me feel better offensively.
Gird yourself.
Oh, boy.
John, when you said sexy attacking defense, I was like, oh, man, because that's like when I think about Oregon and what is most daunting about playing their offense, it's sure their talent level, but they are relentless on offense. And what I mean by that historically, and last year's a perfect example, when the Michigans and Ohio States of the world have left the door open for upsets, it's when they play ball control. They don't take advantage of their talent differential to other teams. They rely too much on defense. They get too conservative on offense. That is not how Oregon rolls. They scored more than 30 points in 11 of their 14 games last year. Only a weak season opener against Idaho, a tricky November game in Madison, and the playoff Buckeyes, as opposed to the regular season crappy Buckeyes, were able to hold their offense in check. Stylistically and on paper, this team is every bit as daunting in 2025, but they have had tremendous turnover. And at the very least, I see them struggling to match last year's offensive numbers. Although, this is one of those times where I just want to pause. Like, everything I'm about to say is about Oregon in the context of Oregon from last year, from the year before, like previewing this team for the point of previewing this team. As it pertains to Northwestern and the Northwestern matchup against Oregon, this is a titanic mismatch. And that's not to crap on our team. That's just the deck we're playing with this Oregon squad. So, but what's interesting, when you look at the 2024 Oregon Ducks and the production and points compared to 2023, you might be thinking, hold on, Scuzz, they had a massive drop-off. What gives? And I think part of what gives is that when the toughest defense you play in year A is Washington, albeit you played them twice, and then the following year you play Washington and also 5 other defenses better than Washington, it tends to impact your production. Most critically, in 2024, the Big Ten did a pretty darn good job of covering Oregon's wide receivers. Tez Johnson underperformed his 2023 numbers by 25%. Evan Stewart didn't do any better than he did at Texas A&M. And nobody filled Troy Franklin's role. There was a Troy Franklin-sized hole at the top of the depth chart. Now, when you look at what Dylan Gabriel did last year, he threw for 3,800 yards and 30 touchdowns. That is nothing to sneeze at. But it is a big drop-off from 4,500 and 45 TDs the year before. Their running game remained really strong.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you. You just mentioned Troy Franklin and Bo Nix. those guys are Broncos. Oh, okay. I'll be over here now.
You pat you on the head, Sam. It's all good. Oregon's running game last year dipped off a little bit. They lost 30 yards per game. They're pretty good in season. It's just that when they got to the playoff against Ohio State, they ran into a brick wall. Now coming into 25, I mentioned tremendous turnover. They're replacing their quarterback, their top two wideouts, their top tight end, and their 2-year stud running back in Jordan James. Also, Evan Stewart, who is primed to be the number one receiver this year, is probably going to miss a solid portion of the season, almost certainly the Northwestern game. He had a big knee injury in spring ball, and we all know that's just hard to come back from in such a short time frame. On the plus side, their offensive line returns center and right guard. They've got a fair amount of depth. They have excellent transfer linemen, bringing a ton of starting experience. On paper, they are bigger than last year and almost as experienced. No doubt, like they have to prove it on the field. They have to gel. They have to find that continuity within the O-line. But I think offensive line has been a huge differentiating strength for Oregon for a number of years. The position group is well coached. It has great identity. I think it's what separated Oregon from the other Pac-12 teams as they were coming into the Big Ten. This team has played like big and nasty and intimidating football in the trenches for a number of years now. That is not what you've seen from the likes of USC or UCLA or even Washington. And I think the O-line at Oregon is heads the list of and heads the top of that identity. Now, you may recall the name Mekhi Hughes from our Tulane preview. Dude was an absolute stud at Tulane last year, and now he joins Noah Whittington in the backfield at Oregon. These guys are both really talented. It is still going to be hard to match what Jordan James did the last couple of years here. They're probably going to have a less effective running game. The quarterback is going to be, Dylan Gabriel ran less than Bo Nix, and I think their quarterback is probably going to produce even less on the ground here in 2025. I mentioned the holes at wide receiver. They lost their top two guys. Evan Stewart is hurt, but they have a ton of options. It's like Ohio State. The rich just get richer. Their top recruit, DeCorian Moore, is like a number one overall wide receiver. He looks just plug and play. Gary Bryant was a top contributor in 23 who was injured last season, didn't play. And they also had Malik Benson, a top flight recruit who was at Bama in 2023 and then went to JUCO last year. So they are effectively reloading at wide receiver. Quarterback's the interesting piece of this team. So there's no doubt that Lanning and his staff are just really, really good at quarterback development. And Bo Nix, who you mentioned earlier, Sammy, is the poster child. We all know Bo Nix was just okay at Auburn, and then he became an all-world QB at Oregon over his time there. And so the interesting thing is what happens when you take a really good, set of coaches and apply them to talent that has not done well in previous places. And yes, Bo Nix blossomed at Oregon. Can this staff do the same thing with Dante Moore? This is a wildly different assignment from what they had to do last year with Dylan Gabriel, who came in pretty much fully formed and was excellent. Moore was not great at UCLA. Now, granted, there was way less talent surrounding him, etc. And he's had a year in the Oregon system to mature and learn. But his biggest problems in 2023 were dealing with pressure. He held the ball way too long. He got sacked a ton. He was also inaccurate and threw too many picks. So that's like a lot to work on. Surely he's improved, but the pocket presence is a huge question. And when you're starting, an obscenely talented O-line, but one that hasn't played a lot together, that maybe amplifies the concerns. I think it's unlikely anyone but Moore starts. But if 2023 at UCLA was any indication, he could get pulled. Austin Novosad has had as much time in the Oregon system as Moore, but he's like a notch down in pedigree. If Moore is like a top 10 QB recruit, this guy is top 20 at best. Similarly, Luke Moga is yet another step down in recruiting profile, and he has no experience as of yet. But are you guys ready to feel old?
Let's do it.
Again, more?
Entering the quarterback room this year, Akili Smith Jr.
Oh my
gosh.
Now he's a true freshman, but he was a pretty highly rated recruit, and of course he brings with him a truckload of nostalgia. I don't think he will play, but that's going to be fun in years to come. Anyway, all this talent turnover, like this team is a team that should and does reload year in and year out, but that turnover gets a lot harder to manage if your quarterback position takes a significant step back, and I think that's a real risk for Oregon this year. Dante Moore he was a very rough prospect at UCLA, and again he's had time in the system, time with his coaching staff. We will see how much he has developed. But even if he struggles somewhat, this offense is still explosive. They're intimidating. The receivers are good. The O-line, like I said, is nasty. They have talent in the running in the backfield. The consistency might not be this year, and I just don't think they can hit the heights that they did last year. Certainly not the year before. But they're going to be so flipping hard to score on that like beating the Ducks just remains a tremendous challenge. I don't think that I don't think any of us would predict them to win the Big Ten title this year like we did last year, but this is still an absolute top flight team.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients, no fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group, compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation, and go Cats. Well, that doesn't bode well for my sleep for the next couple weeks as we lead into that game. Let's run through their schedule here real quick. They open the season at home against Montana State and Oklahoma State before coming to Evanston. Then they go home to take on Oregon State, and then they get back on the plane, head to Penn State. Have a bye week.
Hey, at least we get the look-ahead situation.
Look ahead to the rivalry game?
Yeah, to the Civil War. Or the, what do they call it now?
I don't know if they call it anything, but it should be the Platypus game.
Yeah.
Whether or not that they've done that officially, I don't know, but should be the Platypus.
Look, there's a lake and a Platypus trophy to distract them. Excellent.
Yeah. So they get a bye week after Penn State. They're home for Indiana. Frequent flyer miles up October 18th at Rutgers. Home for Wisconsin. They get another bye week. They travel to Iowa on November 8th. Then they're home for Minnesota and USC before finishing off the season in Seattle against Washington.
It's a pretty nice schedule.
Yeah.
It's pretty. It's not. I'll say a couple things about it. I mean, it's pretty nice. A lot of the landmines and the theoretical landmines in the back half of their season, they're really helped by the fact that they don't have to travel very far. That Iowa game is the outlier. I think
recall that they went to Wisconsin in early November last year, and they barely won that game against a very bad Wisconsin football team.
Right. So that's the one that in the whole back half of the schedule that I would circle is that Iowa game, because I mean, like Washington, that's not a travel for them. I mean, they've danced with Washington forever. USC, they get it home. Gophers, they get it home. Wisconsin, they get it home. Who cares that they have to go out to Rutgers? The first half, though, first of all, holy crap, this non-con. Oklahoma State is down right now.
And by down, you mean god awful.
Yeah, so that's a big asterisk. But just keep in mind that theoretically Oregon could choose to play any three teams in the country. And they're playing the Civil War, which is their rivalry game, in one of those three games. Oklahoma State, who, they're down, but you're still talking about a Big 12 football team, Mike Gundy offense. And then everything Scuzz said, everything we talked about in the non-con relative to SCS games, they opened with Montana State. You know what Montana State's record was last season? 15-1. They lost in the national championship game to North Dakota State by 3. That's who Oregon's opening the season against. Imagine if we were opening the season against a 15-1 FCS team. But Oregon's
And before anybody gets like, meh, 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 like they only beat Idaho by 10 to start the year last year. And Idaho's
yeah,
a far cry from Montana State. They won't be favored by 45 points over Montana State. I'll say that much.
right. So I mean, it's like the first half of their schedule is no joke. I mean, again, they're playing the FCS championship game loser. In Oklahoma State, they're at us, which is, we're far down the pecking order within the construct of the first half of the schedule. Their rivalry game at Penn State and home against Indiana. I mean, it's a front-loaded schedule for sure.
Well, and at Penn State is effectively, that's one of only a couple games that very probably decides the conference championship.
Yeah,
right.
Win that game, Oregon's in the driver's seat.
for sure.
Right. This is, I mean, the larger thing hanging over all this, and the reason why Oregon can schedule a Montana State and not blink. And remember that Idaho game. I think Oregon it felt like for the first couple of weeks of last season, they hadn't shown us the full battleship, and then they kind of rounded into form. It's everything we talked about with Ohio State when we previewed Ohio State. There's a handful of teams, 3-4 teams, doing this thing perfectly, and Oregon's one of them. They're like, you can look and be like, yeah, they said goodbye to a ton of guys, and they brought in a ton of new guys in transfer on both sides of the ball, and the pedigree of those guys is so friggin' elite that it is just like it's just a ton of monster recruits and a ton of the very best of the best transfers. And it's like, their landing is totally comfortable playing this way. Like, I think they're the 8 team in the country. But they're going to be reloaded for bear. And yeah, their quarterback situation, I certainly would say is the least stable that it's been in a couple of years.
Indeed.
But if you look across the bottom, this team, like, that might make the difference between them being first in the country and 8th in the country. All the other pieces on the team are so sick. And it's like, do not, Sam, you talked about like staying up at night. Don't lose any sleep over this game. There's only house money on this one. It's the other games where the bread is going to be buttered here. Like, if some sort of miracle comes to play here, then fantastic. But we can have a really rough day against Oregon and still have a really great start to this football season for sure.
One cool thing though, this is Big Noon Saturday on Fox. Like, we're getting the full national telecast.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That is awesome.
Yeah. So, that's a chance for the nation on broadcast TV to see the beauty by the lake, which is and I can't tell you how many cutaways they're going to have to like the skeleton of Ryan Field that's slowly rising in the distance.
By that point, it'll be a lot more than skeleton, probably too. It gets more and more developed every day.
Yeah.
It's and you're right, and you're like, so there is this theoretical massive opportunity. It's just that every time I go in my head and I try to map out how would that happen, it's just like, it's hard. It's so hard for me to get there. I'm just like, you're thinking about like, what are our theoretical strengths? And it's like, all right, well, if we get the full Stone of 2 years ago and our wide receivers blossom, and on a season, from a season-wide perspective, our ability to chuck the ball downfield and really like unlock our full receiver core is the massive strength of this football team. That is still playing into everything Oregon does well. That's all their best stuff. Oregon wants you to throw. That's where their bread is buttered. They would love for you to throw on every single play. They're just nothing but defensive ends who can get after the football and guys who can cover downfield. So, it's like finding some way to run and then a couple big turnovers and Moore is really squirrely and maybe he's coming off a really shaky game against Oklahoma State, something like that. It's really hard. This is a really good football team. And Lanning Lanning can claim to be as good at, he can claim to be the best other than like a Ryan Day right now. So, yeah.
Well, and I gotta say, like, if you're a Northwestern fan and you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I don't want it, like, go for the spectacle.
go to the game.
I'll be honest. The reason I circled this game, the reason I've acquired tickets for my family. I wanted my kids and my wife to see the new stadium. They haven't had a chance yet. Well, Robbie came last year, but I want the whole crew to get it. I'm as those who have listened to the podcast for a long time know that I'm fighting a losing battle against Notre Dame. I got to do all I can, but this game is all gravy. It's house money, like you said, John. Like, I have zero expectations. At the very least, I'm gonna get to watch an absolutely incredible football team play in a beautiful setting, and I'll get to cheer on my football team as well. But no expectations, and it's
And this will
sometimes it's fun to just watch excellence, even if it comes at the expense of what who you want to win. And I don't know, there's something nice about, like, we don't have the history with these guys like we do with, frankly, a couple other teams from the old Pac-12 and the other teams that are often good in our conference, where, like, I can't stomach getting excited for number 1 Ohio State. Are you kidding me? I'm over that
Hell
shit.
No.
Right. Yeah, I have no animosity against Oregon fans.
Yeah.
Or any Oregon fans that show up, good on you. Like, I've got right, exactly. There's no hate there.
Quack, quack.
But this will be, think of it this way. This will be the best football team to ever visit us to play in this stadium, ever. Unless there's something that happens that we're unaware of.
That's such an interesting point. I think you're right.
In the 2 years, unless unbeknownst to us, they somehow keep this thing up, and I don't know why they would ever do that when we're going to have this unbelievable new stadium.
Yeah,
Oregon will probably be the best team that ever plays on this field. So, and we got a chance to give them our very best.
Well,
and who knows what's going to happen?
The best football team to ever play on this field.
Great point. Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Oregon's bringing a lot of talent to that field, but it's all relative. We've watched Izzy Skane and Aaron Corkendall and Matty Taylor play on that field together, so it's all relative.
When Oregon wins a national championship, we can
right
broach that conversation.
Yeah,
exactly.
Anything else to mention on the Ducks before we put this one to bed?
No, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is
where do you guys think? So we didn't really do a prediction on there.
No.
So I mean, we highlighted, like, obviously Penn State, Indiana.
Penn State, Indiana.
That trip,
like, I think
that trip to Penn State, I would not have them winning. That's more credit to Penn State. I think the team that Penn State is going to have this year, and the fact that against teams other than Ohio State, Penn State's been a pretty damn good football team. That game was a knockout dragout in the Big Ten championship game last year.
It really was. It really was. You know what's funny? I was just starting to look for, like, when was the last time they played Penn State? And of course, it was
Big Ten championship. Yeah.
Yep. That was a bananas game, and, like, not to put cart before the horse here, but, like, Oregon has a ton of turnover on their team, and they're replacing it with a lot of awesome guys. Penn State has no turnover on offense. Like, literally everyone is back.
Right.
And John, to your point, like, a team that wants to run, like Oregon wants you to throw, Penn State wants to lean into those running backs. And I mean, talk about a great stylistic matchup between two teams with two exceptional defenses.
Right. Penn State desperately wants Drew Aller to be. I mean, Oregon desperately wants Drew Aller to be involved in that game as much as possible, but Penn State doesn't necessarily have to do that. They probably can make hay with their running backs. But I don't know, 11-1. That's still, maybe that gets them into the Big Ten championship game, but we're all going to be waiting to see between this Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State dance, like, what the heck happens there, and if Penn State can actually get over the hump, or do we end up with some three-headed monster race or something? But Oregon's going to the playoff. I would almost guarantee you that. I feel like they're going to have one loss.
Well, they're
probably going to get in.
Let's say Penn State beats both Ohio State and Oregon.
Okay.
They don't play each other, so then it'd be a question of who gets to play in the championship game.
Yeah, they don't play each other. Ohio State has to go to Michigan. Oregon has to go to Iowa. But that's going to be an interesting an interesting breakdown on how
Yeah.
that plays out. I guess as the tiebreaker, do they go to like your ranking in the playoff rankings?
I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
it could be.
I think that's pretty far down. There's other tiebreakers. I think common opponents.
Are there?
And,
Okay.
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, one thing's for sure. If Moore is great, then this team's as good as any team in the country. They just won't have any other weaknesses, I don't think. But that's a big if. More likely they probably drop off. And yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to win the Big Ten. I don't think, but I think they're certainly going to be in the conversation. They're going to be right there. I think this is probably the 2 or 3 team in the conference. They're awesome.
but it wouldn't surprise me to see them in the title game at all.
Nope, not at all. And does Drew Aller want to lose that game at Penn State against Oregon? He sure does. And if he's going to be involved in a large capacity, then Oregon can absolutely beat them and can absolutely go undefeated in this regular season. They can 100% be the better team in all 12 of these games.
Well, on that note, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, at Westlaw Pirates, and you can always email us, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the West Tech lot of Martin Stadium flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Skasba and Sam Walter, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.